Trey Lance made his preseason debut, and it was okay, I guess. 188 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 3 sacks. He did lead the Cowboys in rushing with 6 attempts and 44 yards, but no rushing touchdowns at all in a 12-13 loss to the Los Angeles Rams, which was interesting despite the fact that Stetson Bennett had 4 interceptions, and they still cannot complete a victory nor score a single touchdown. But I want to know, how would you grade Trey Lance's Dallas Cowboys debut?
Well, I think that anytime you play quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, whether you're the starter, Dak Prescott, or the backup, Trey Lance, or Cooper Rush, you're going to be, some fans are going to like you and some aren't. It's easy to be polarized in Dallas, and certainly Dak Prescott is a polarizing player. You hear good things about him, then you hear terrible things about him. So, and he's lived up to both at times, right? He's played extremely well in the preseason and been considered an MVP candidate, and then he botches it in the playoffs regularly. And so he's a polarizing player, and I think you can say the same thing about Trey Lance. He was hyped. He was a number 3 pick in the NFL draft 4 years ago. He played 6 games with the 49ers as a starter. His second season, he was robbed of more playing time by an injury that put him out for the season. So it was hard to tell whether he was going to be a star or he was just an also-ran. And they gave him a little time starting in his 3rd season, and they decided, you know what, we're parting ways with him. He's not going to be a star for us. That's what we think. So they traded him to the Dallas Cowboys for, I believe, a 4th-round pick. And he went there and never played a snap because Dak Prescott was the starter, having a great season. He sat on the sidelines and watched. And did he learn anything? Well, I would say it's questionable because the coach says, everyone's saying he still has a lot to learn. He's raw as a quarterback. McCarthy said he's still got a lot to work on. Time and repetition will help him. You want to see him out there running the offense at a high level. The footwork and conceptual things are new for him and new in the scheme. He's making good progress. He's wired the right way. He's a great athlete. We're happy with what we saw from Lance. Liked his command. Lance said he needs to improve in the red zone. He left some plays out there. And looking at his performance, which I watched the game and I rewatched the highlights, I thought he played pretty well, actually. I didn't think he played bad. He didn't turn the ball over. He was 25 of 41, so he had a decent percentage completion rate. He had 188 yards and 44 yards rushing. He didn't quite play the whole game. His running looked very good. And his drives, the first drive, 52 yards for field goal. Second, 45 yards, failed on 4th down. 23 yards on his 3rd drive, missed a 65-yard field goal. 29 on his 4th drive, failed on 4th down again. 60 yards on his 5th drive, a field goal, and -1 on his last drive, and they got another field goal. Maybe they say he was mediocre because the failed 4th down plays, but and maybe because he kind of dinked and dunked a little bit. I mean, he didn't really throw the ball way down the field, but he looked okay to me. I thought he looked pretty good.
So if you were to give it a letter grade, what would you give a letter grade?
I'd give him a B+.
B plus?
B+, yeah.
B plus.
That's a long way from A+, but
not really.
I think
it's 2 grades over.
He didn't turn the ball over. He had decent yards, 188 yards, very good completion percentage. His running looked really good. He knew when to haul it down and run. He didn't take a bunch of sacks. He got rid of the ball in a timely fashion. So some of his throws did sail, a little bit. And, he says he missed a few plays out there and didn't get a touchdown. And he didn't play. He says he didn't play that well in the red zone. But I think he should get more time next week. And we'll see whether I think it's repetition for him. He really has not had much playing time. And I think that the more he plays, I think he'll get better. I'm not giving up on Trey Lance.
Well, I've given up on him already back when he was with the 49ers. Back when Mike Silver said back in January of last year how if he can go for a 3rd-round pick, and so I said on the show, go for it. Ended up with a 4th-round pick, which is kind of okay compared to the rest of his quarterbacks in his draft class. We look at Mac Jones, 6th-round pick. Justin Fields, conditional 6th-round pick, which will be a 6th-round pick, unless we're going to talk about it a little bit later. These opportunities he's getting with Russell Wilson injured could mean that could turn into a higher draft pick for the Chicago Bears. And, everyone else in his draft class minus Trevor Lawrence, I believe, is not on the same team they started with. So that's kind of embarrassing for that draft class. But for strictly Trey Lance, I'm going with a C-. C-. Because has he improved? His career completion percentage, I believe, is what, 54.5? 54.9, excuse me. 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. And what do you have in this game? 60.97. So if you want to round it up to 61% completion percentage, go for it. 188 passing yards, 44 rushing yards. He's athletic, but we knew that coming out of the gate. So I'm not impressed with, or rather, I'm not surprised and in awe of how well he runs the football because he was super athletic. He's 6'4", 226. And we saw that back in North Dakota State. He was incredibly athletic. It was his passing that was a problem. He came out of that draft class as the rawest quarterback in that draft class. And he was supposed to get all these reps with the 49ers, and he was supposed to take over for Jimmy G, but yet they re-signed Jimmy G to a 1-year deal to have some stability in the locker room. So I'm not impressed at all by this performance. We had Stetson Bennett throwing an interception basically every other pass. You were in the red zone a couple of times off interceptions, and actually on one of their final drives, there was a play where they were basically in the red zone, and they went backwards 11 yards. That was their entire drive. 5 plays, negative 11 yards. Yes, there was a penalty in there, but still. So I'm not impressed at all. If Stetson Bennett gives your offense the opportunity to score several times, and yes, 2 of them, you were turnover on downs. Actually, I think there were 3, actually. Yeah, I think there were 3 turnover on downs plays. What am I supposed to do? I just think this reiterates the need for the Cowboys to re-sign Dak Prescott. Maybe not to $65 million, but now maybe $60 million is more likely when you realize that a quarterback that a lot of people think could be the replacement for Dak Prescott, Trey Lance, not looking so great, not developing so well. Do I expect him to get a lot more reps in game 2? Absolutely, because he desperately needs it. A lot of people actually on this show have commented saying, well, this season he's going to take over the QB2 spot. Well, now, according to Todd Archer, Lance is still beneath career backup Cooper Rush on the Dallas Cowboys depth chart. So, unfortunately, that's not the case. And so he needs to show some serious improvement and, score a touchdown in order for him to actually begin to even start the process of moving into the QB2. Because we saw Cooper Rush come in when Dak Prescott was injured, and he actually put up a couple wins. Hell, he was undefeated for, I think, the first 4 or 5 games a couple years ago. So if Cooper Rush can do that and Trey Lance can't score a touchdown in the preseason against second, third, and fourth stringers, how is he supposed to replace Dak Prescott? Yes, McCarthy said that you want to see him running the offense at a high level. The footwork and some of the things we're asking him to do are conceptually new. We just need work. We just need as much time as we can. Well, if he's not playing that well, are you sure you want to keep giving him this time? Well, I understand it's the preseason, but if you're seeing, think about this. Kyle Shanahan, who made Matt Schaub a Pro Bowler, Matt Ryan an MVP, got Jimmy G to a Super Bowl and another NFC Championship game, made him look like legitimate, viable quarterbacks, and some have won accolades, some have won awards, and he gave up on Trey Lance, who was supposedly the highest ceiling out of this draft class. If he gave up on him, what does that say for Trey Lance? He couldn't make Trey Lance work. He made Jimmy G work. He's making Brock Purdy work. He made Matt Schaub and Matt Ryan work beautifully. And for some reason, Trey Lance is the massive outlier here. Mm-hmm. Well, so I don't think it's coaching. I just think it's the player. Because there's a bunch of reports saying, he's had some really good days in camp and some really bad days in camp. And yes, and by the way, it's the same thing with Daniel Jones. People giving Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt in practice. He's a 6-year player. Trey Lance, this is his 4th year in the league? I'm not going to treat him like he's a rookie. I'm not treating him like it's his sophomore season. We're going into year 4 here. He's a senior. Yeah, well, he hasn't had much time to play, and when he was in college, he didn't play that much football either. There was a risk. Correct, because of the COVID year, yeah. It was a risk taking him because he never played that much in college. He was looked at as a prototypical super athlete. Yeah, 6'4", 220. Whether his
mental acumen for playing the quarterback position was going to be able to be developed fully. It remains to be seen. He hasn't had that much time on the field. He did play. He wasn't playing with the first string players for the Cowboys because he wasn't playing against first string players either. But he needs some time with the first group. I'd like to see him play a quarter with the first group and see what he could do.
Well, maybe there's an opportunity for Trey Lance to start this next game, and obviously he won't have his number one wide receiver because CeeDee Lamb is still dealing with the contract dispute. But I'm not saying he played poorly. He definitely didn't play good. He played okay. He didn't play good enough to be like, oh my God, Dak Prescott, watch your back. Here comes Trey Lance shocking the world. And I think, honestly, you look at Mike McCarthy, I feel like nobody respects Mike McCarthy due to some of his late game time decisions with clock management, sometimes just his overall offensive coaching ability.
Yeah, well, I respect him.
Absolutely.
I think
we've done it on the show, actually.
He has a lot of experience as a head coach and as a coach in the NFL. And he knows player talent, and I think he's honest when he speaks about the players. I don't think he would say that Trey Lance has potential if he didn't think so, and he still does. So I'm trusting that. I'm hoping he gets some more reps next week and gets to play with the first team so we can see more about what he might be able to do.
I think I would have been much more impressed if he had more touch on the ball. There was one, I think, on a fourth down in the red zone to the left side. There was a potential touchdown throw that he overthrew. There were a couple plays that he just left on the field that, hell, Mac Jones made a couple beautiful plays in the Jaguars game. I'm sure Mac Jones could have made a couple of these plays that Trey Lance wasn't. They were in the same draft class. One got kicked to the curb. The other one's still being defended by Trey Lance fans, by 49er fans, and now by Cowboys fans.
Well, obviously, he's a polarizing player because I support him and you don't.
I just think, what's the hype for? Yes, he's 6'4", 220, incredibly athletic. But he has trouble throwing the football. When he's out there, he doesn't play very well. And yes, you could say that he hasn't had much time with live bullets being fired at him or live reps in the game. But he hasn't been good enough to deserve those live reps. These preseason games are the only time we're going to get to see him because he's been on a team, by the way, beaten out by Jimmy Garoppolo. And no one thinks Jimmy Garoppolo's a good quarterback. Brock Purdy was given that team as soon as he began to start and win games. Trey Lance had difficulty winning games on the same team.
If Brock Purdy had not come out and shown the way he did and go undefeated in the regular season and on the way to the Super Bowl before he got injured, I bet Trey Lance would have stayed with the 49ers one more year. I bet they wouldn't have dropped him.
I'm pretty sure if Brock Purdy went 500... And, that first season after Jimmy G went down, after Trey Lance went down, I think there would have been a QB battle next offseason between Purdy and between Lance. Yeah, but instead, Brock Purdy decided, you know what, let me just take over. Let me go right into sixth gear and just gun it. And he did
more
beautiful.
Power to him. He
Absolutely.
did great. Yeah.
I just think that there were so many plays left on the field that how can we say Trey Lance is such a great player with so much potential when we've seen him? And by the way, yes, we haven't seen him in live action, but Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, the 49ers saw him in practice. The Cowboys are seeing him in practice. The 49ers got off him. People are saying that Trey Lance, he could be the next guy to replace Dak Prescott. Jerry Jones has even hinted sometimes about Trey Lance, Mike McCarthy. Yes, obviously, if you're the owner and the coach, you're supposed to have faith in your players. But the writing's on the wall. Trey Lance, first of all, way overdrafted. He's based on value alone.
Yeah,
he is not like the value of a third overall pick. He does not equate to that value.
Well, hindsight is 20/20. When they drafted him, they thought they thought that he was going to be a star. And he had the tools to do it. And so far, we haven't seen it. But I don't think it was a terrible performance by him.
So let me ask you this. What's it going to take for you to say, Trey Lance, maybe not as good as I thought? What would it take you? What would it take for you to say that?
I would say, he'd have to throw some into interceptions and critical spots. Make some judgmental errors in critical spots, fumble the ball, not manage the clock correctly. Those kinds of things would show he's not up to it mentally. Physically, he's got the tools. I think that he needs more reps.
would not beating out Cooper Rush for this season draw some major question marks in your head?
That's going to be hard to do. I mean, there's only 2 preseason games left. They're going to be tuning up the first offensive team at some point here. That's going to take reps away from him. And they're going to,
Dak Prescott's not going to play in the preseason, though.
So at all? He's not going to play at all?
My guess would be no.
I don't know. They'll probably play him a little bit. They might.
Could be.
And so they got to give Cooper Rush some reps to get him ready. There's a risk.
3 passes.
There's a risk-reward factor here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd love to see Trey Lance step up and really shine, and then they could say goodbye to Cooper Rush, and they could move him up to QB2. But based on the performance this past week, they can't do that right now. So they got to wait another week and see what he does. But it's going to be, again, a small sample size no matter what they do. There's only 3 preseason games nowadays.
And that's what I have to go off of. I can't go off what could be. I have to go off of what we've seen so far.
And that hasn't been much.
Or
it's
very good. Or
size.
very good. Correct. Yeah. It hasn't been much, but it also has not been very good. But obviously, when you are that athletic, when people have that much faith in you, especially your coach, your owner, I think you will get those opportunities. And just like Gerard Mayo said, you have to capitalize on the amount of opportunities regardless of how small.
Well, I'm sure Jerry Jones was disappointed. He'd love to see Trey Lance
just
really shine, and then he could maybe drive the price down of Dak Prescott a little bit. But that didn't happen.
I'm sure he would have loved to do that. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, if you want to check out the full episode, make sure you click the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to listen to this show anywhere you go, make sure you go to anchor.fm/The Harvey Hour or anywhere you get your podcasts.